Welcome to White Guys for Kamala. I'm your host, John Ennis. Today I'll be doing a sit-down interview with Professor Ciara Torres-Spelliscy about her new book, Corporatacracy. What made you want to write this book?
Corporatacracy was inspired by January 6th and the attack on the Capitol. I had worked there as a Senate staffer right out of college. And when I was there were two Capitol policemen who were killed in the line of duty. They were stopping a gunman from coming onto the property. And I remember going to the funeral for those two officers. And so it hit me particularly hard when I heard that a mob was attacking the Capitol. Because I knew from personal experience that those Capitol police officers keep America safe and they make democracy real. And so I wrote this book because I was just incensed at this attack on American democracy.
How does your background in campaign finance figure into the January 6th riot?
So I sort of think of this book as Citizens United meets January 6th.
Citizens United is a 2010 Supreme Court case that gave corporations and unions the right to spend their treasury funds on political ads.
And I look at almost everything as if it's a money and politics problem, because often it is. And here I looked at the corporate money that went into a group called the Rule of Law Defense Fund, which many people have never even heard of. It's a side shoot of the Republican Attorney General's Association, better known as RAGA. And half of RAGA's money is from publicly traded corporations. So I looked at that corporate money that went into RAGA and then ended up at the Rule of Law Defense Fund. And one of the things that the Rule of Law Defense Fund did is it sent out robocalls inviting people to, quote, fight at the Capitol.
The March to Save America is tomorrow in Washington, D.C. at the Ellipse in President's Park between E Street and Constitution Avenue on the south side of the White House, with doors opening at 7 o'clock a.m. At 1 o'clock p.m., we will march to the Capitol building and call on Congress to stop the steal. We are hoping patriots like you will join us to continue the fight to protect the integrity of our elections. For more information, visit marchtosaveamerica.com. This call is paid for and authorized by the Rule of Law Defense Fund, 202-796-5838.
And I think a lot of people don't know that story. And then when you look at who funded RAGA in 2020, which is right before this happened, it's really big names. You know, it's Home Depot, it's Blue Cross, it's CVS, it's Pfizer. So companies that you would normally not think would be funding such things were funding it. Now, I think it's fair to say that we wouldn't know, or those companies didn't know that their money would be used in this way. And I think that's probably fair. But then the other thing I looked at is the behavior of corporations after January 6th. And there was a brief period where many corporations came out sua sponte and said, we are not going to fund what has later been called the Sedition Caucus. Those are those Republicans who would not vote to affirm Biden's win. And the problem is they didn't keep their promise. So many of the same corporations that promised after January 6th that they would stop have gone back and funded the Sedition Caucus. And it's the same characters who were funding RAGA in 2020.
Wow. Are there reforms that you recommend in your book?
There are lots of reforms I recommend in my book. So one of the things I encourage people to do is, as both voters and consumers and investors, number one, look at what politicians have actually done. If they are election deniers, they do not deserve your vote. If they are corporations that are funding election deniers, they don't deserve to be patronized by your dollars. And so I'm trying to encourage people to hold both sides accountable. I want people to hold the politicians accountable, like, don't vote for an election denier, don't vote for the Sedition Caucus. And then I really want people to think about where the money comes from and follow the money to the extent that one can. And when you find a corporation it has been funding really awful people, and Home Depot is like an excellent example of this, they have put lots of money into super PACs that do really awful things. Maybe there's another home improvement store that you can go to as a customer or invest in as a shareholder.
Are there reforms that you recommend in your book?
Yes, we can also have legal reforms. Number one, we could change the voting laws at the federal level to make them more uniform and open. We could also change the campaign finance laws at the federal level to bring more transparency. And the more that we change the laws to make it easier to vote, I think the better and healthier our democracy will be.
Have you seen money moving in this election towards any one major place?
Some of the biggest donations that I've seen so far go to super PACs, and those are super PACs that have been supporting the re-election of President Trump. On the other side, there has been a lot of small dollar donations, but those are generally going to the Harris side.
To the campaign directly? Yeah, okay. What's the worst campaign finance story that you found out about?
The worst campaign finance story I've ever heard goes something like this, and I'll give it to you in miniature. So I tell the story of a political party, and it's broke. And they're so broke that they're quite in the red, and they're worried that they won't be able to continue as a political party. And so what they do is they turn to the richest people in their society and they ask for money. They do it at a secret meeting, and at that meeting, the head of the political party says, ominously, this is going to be the last free election. And the titans of industry who are at this meeting hear that pitch and hand over millions in dark money. And then suddenly our political party, which was broke, is suddenly flush with cash. This was the Nazi Party in 1933. And some of those industrialists end up being tried at Nuremberg after World War II for war crimes. Mostly it was for using slave labor. But one of the reasons why they had access to slave labor was their closeness with the Nazi political party. And so I think that is the worst campaign finance story I have ever heard, that these industrialists rescue the Nazis out of like the pit of despair, pump them up, and then benefit from their violence and their racism. And I don't want that to happen in the United States, which is one of the reasons I wrote this book.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to tell us about it.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.